Hey, welcome to the stream. Hope your week is off to a great start. Got a lot of stuff planned for today's stream. I'm going to need some help. If you're watching later on the replay, feel free to drop a comment and let me know any of the answers you may have to some of the questions and the things that we're going to be going over in this video. So it's been a really fun week with all the different Apple drops. Stuff finally started coming in last Wednesday, and it's always kind of hard to wait for everything to start coming in when Apple does their announcement, because they typically announce stuff and then you got the pre-order a couple days later that you got to wait another week or so before items start coming in. And B&H was kind enough to loan me some gear. I'm still waiting on some of my M5 MacBook Pros to come in for the tests and comparisons. It seems like what most of the YouTubers and people on the internet have been into in the last week or so, though, has been the MacBook Neo. So this is all over the internet. I got my video up as quick as I could about it, but I really wanted to give it a little bit of time to test everything with it and make sure I really understood exactly what it was capable of. And after using this for a while, I've honestly been really impressed with the MacBook Neo, but I also had a couple of things that I decided I would go ahead and test and see how that worked on it, just because I was curious, how far can you push the MacBook Neo? And that apparently ruffled a few feathers. I made a couple of posts on Threads, which I'd never really done anything with Threads in the past. We'll take a look at this post in a little bit. So I made a Threads post, made a YouTube community post that got way more comments than most of the things that I post about. And then I also made a YouTube video about some of the issues that I was running into with the MacBook Neo. And the comments on it were kind of funny to me. I felt like they weren't necessarily very fair to what I was trying to do with the computer, but I also thought maybe I'm actually the person who's confused. Maybe I'm the one who's doing something wrong with it. So yeah, I'm not sure if I was getting commenter gaslighting or if I'm actually expecting too much out of this computer, or if maybe people were just confused what I was even talking about in the first place. So lots of stuff to talk about. The first thing I'm working on right now is I'm testing all the latest Apple releases. The new Studio Display just came in. I need to get it out of the box. That's the cheaper $1,600 model, so it's not the higher end Studio Display XDR that is replacing the old 32-inch version, the 6K one that's no longer being made. I personally was a little bit disappointed with Apple's display launches. I think all they had to do to perfect it was launch the Studio Display at 5K, 120 hertz at $1,600. I think it would have been a win. Like, that's all they needed to do. I know the new XDR one is super bright. It has 120 hertz, but I think it's around $3,200 or $3,600, which is definitely a letdown. And I really think they dropped the ball by doing that instead of just making one display for $1,600 or maybe even $2,000. Or if they could have come out with the 6K 32-inch display for a little more than $2,000, I think that would have been an easy recommendation. The one from Asus and LG, those are both great, but Apple displays are just always a little bit more premium and really dialed in with the Mac ecosystem. So definitely disappointed on that front with the display launch, but I'm excited to at least get the new Studio Display 5K 27-inch base model out, see how it stacks up to the old one. I've got the old one. I've been using it for a couple years now. Really like it. I've been ready to upgrade, change my setup up a little bit, and now I'm not really sure what I want to do with it exactly, because Apple didn't drop exactly what we were wanting. So Studio Display test coming soon. I've been using the iPad Air 13-inch a lot, the new M4 version of it. I've also been using the M4 version of it, the 11-inch one, and they feel very similar to the other ones. I need to do some more advanced testing and side-by-side with the older M3 to see if they improve the speakers or anything like that on it. But the Air is just a really nice iPad. Great screen quality. Doesn't have ProMotion still. It still doesn't have mini LED or OLED or anything like that. It's just the P3 color gamut. But the depth on it is really nice. The 13-inch one, I've tried to be a 13-inch iPad fan for a while now. I had one of the older 12.9-inch Pros probably like 5 years ago now, and that thing was just a lot to lug around. It was the one with the home button on it. So the last few iPads I bought the 11-inch version, and I kind of feel like that's the ideal all-around version. I have been messing with the iPad mini more. I wish Apple would have dropped a new one of these with some of the better screen features. The Mini is a really fun iPad to use. I've really liked this the more I get to using it. But yeah, the M4 iPad Air review, it's going to take a little bit longer. I feel like I need to see what my unique spin on the iPad Air is, what I notice about it, and what I think it's worth buying for or not. Because there's a lot of people who don't want to spend more than $300 on an iPad. And I think that's the big problem with the Air is the $600 price tag with no keyboard is just a little bit out of reach for what most people are willing to spend on an iPad. That's part of why the Neo's been so cool, is because we finally have a full-fledged Apple computer, everything on Mac OS, and it's just $600 for the base model. So I think Apple knocked it out of the park with the Neo. I've been very, very happy with it. I just had to push the limits of what it was able to do. So iPad Air videos are coming, and then also MacBook Pro videos are incoming as well. I've got the M5 base model. That one's got 16 gigabytes of RAM, or is it? Yeah, it still comes with 16 stock if you get the M5. And then I've got the M5 Pro. That one has the 1 terabyte SSD and the 24 gigabytes of RAM. So that's the base model M5 Pro. And then I also have the M5 Max. That one's on back order right now. B&H was kind enough to loan me all the different M5 MacBook Pros so we could have every single spec of them to compare and see how big of a difference the better chips make on them. So I'm waiting on those. I've got a lot of testing to do with them. We'll look at some of my Mac tests here in a second. And if you got any input on what you'd like me to see testing on these computers, feel free to drop a comment, shoot me a message. Also, in the description of this video, there's a couple of things. I've got a link where you can join the Discord server. We've got a little discussion going on there with some of the testing that I'm going to be doing on these upcoming computers, some use cases. I just want to think of things through different perspectives to be able to give the best possible advice on which of these great computers you should get, because you don't have to overspend if you don't really need the features of the other ones. But if you do need the features, then it's really nice to get the right one for you when you go to buy it, instead of being disappointed that you tried to save a little bit of money, or maybe you bought one that was just plain overkill for you. I think that can also be a disappointment because they do get really expensive. If you can get by with the $600 MacBook Neo, then why buy a $1,700 MacBook Pro? So that's what I really want my videos to be able to explain and help with. I try to never just tell people exactly what I think you should buy, because I think that is a really personal question, and I think that's something that anyone needs to be considering for themselves. So I don't want to tell you, hey, you have to buy a MacBook Neo or you're not going to be happy with your life. I just don't think that's a good way to be a YouTuber. And I also think there's a lot of YouTube people who are just all about the hype and hyping up the latest things. I want to check out the latest things so you can see what new features have been integrated, what improvements have been made, and then you can go compare that to what you've already got and make your own decision for if the upgrade is really worthwhile or if you should just stick with what you've got. And that's what we're going to be doing with the MacBook Pro series. I've also got the M5 MacBook Air, and that computer is not getting talked about very much because the MacBook Neo kind of just came and ate its lunch. But the M5 MacBook Air has really impressed me so far from a couple of the tests I've done. It's shown pretty significant increases over the M4 MacBook Air. I don't know if I would say you should go sell your M4 MacBook Air and go get the M5, but it's funny how the MacBook Neo kind of became the MacBook Air killer, and the MacBook Air last year really became the MacBook Pro killer. The MacBook Pro is kind of hanging out in overkill land for most people. Although the display on it's still really nice. I really like the MacBook Pro display. I still am using a M4 Pro MacBook Pro for my live streaming and recording setup. It's running Elgato Prompter and some other software, a couple Stream Decks, things like that. And I really like it for that. I could probably get by with the M4 Air for the live stream computer. The Neo wouldn't quite be able to do what I want to do with it just because of the external display limitation and the bandwidth of the ports. So that's why I'm still sticking with a better computer for the live streaming setup that I like to use. But you could also totally probably live stream from a MacBook Neo too. But anyways, we're getting all over the place on this video. MacBook Air is what we were just talking about. I think the M5 MacBook Air is going to be a great computer. It's not going to sell as well as the M4 MacBook Air because of the MacBook Neo. But I'm going to be taking a look at all the different types of software and applications you would want to run on the MacBook Air. I'm going to compare it against all the other chips that are out. So we'll shoot it out directly against the M5 MacBook Pro that comes in at $500 or $600 more expensive than the MacBook Air. We'll also compare it to things like the M4 Mac Mini, probably the M4 Mac Studio as well, just so you can see the performance differences. And I've got this giant spreadsheet that it still needs a lot of work. I've got a lot of stuff going on with it, but it has every computer model that I've ever tested out with all these different benchmarks that I've run. So I've got Geekbench 6 scores. I haven't got to run it on these new computers yet. Geekbench AI, which I had only run on the M5 MacBook Pros. I didn't end up going back and doing those on the other computers, but any computers I still have, I'm going to go back and run as many of these tests as I can, because I really want this spreadsheet to be as full as possible. There's Cinebench 2024 scores. I've also got some LLM performance where I was using Diffusion B generating images locally on the computers. So I'm going to be doing some more of that. Really curious to see how the M5 MacBook Air stacks up against the M5 MacBook Pros. Of course, we'll have the M5 Pro and the M5 Max on this as well. Also some LLM performance, just seeing how fast the computer can create the first token and then how many tokens a second it's able to hit. So I got a couple tests for that. I don't know how many people really care about Blackmagic Raw, but it's a pretty easy benchmark to run, so I'm going to go ahead and keep including it. And also disk speed tests. It's been very interesting to see the change in SSD speeds on these different computers, and also just how slow the MacBook Neo is compared to everything else has been kind of funny as well. The M5 MacBook Air also, they didn't make a super big deal about this, but they actually raised the speed quite a bit over what it was on the M4. So that's a nice little feature, subtle feature that they've updated as well. Xcode build test for compiling code. That'll be cool too, to see how close the M5 MacBook Air is able to come to the Pro. I'm going to do some Blender tests, Logic Pro tests as well. I would like to expand a couple things in this section. Some of the things in this section are really hard for me to test and put in actual number form, because sometimes the way stuff is performing is more about how it feels for you to actually be using the computer. But on Logic Pro, I basically just put a MIDI channel over and over. There's actually a file called the new Logic benchmark, and I ran that. So I think I was told that the MacBook Neo can handle like 40 channels, which compared to the 104 on the Air, that's not terrible. I mean, you don't really need 104 channels. I don't know if I've ever even had a music recording that was using 104 channels, but it's more about headroom and how much space on the computer for processing different things you can have. So that'll be there. Yeah, give me any more info if there's Logic tests you'd like to see. And then also on Final Cut Pro, exporting a 3-minute video to a social media format. Yeah, it was the 4K setting. That was one of the things with the Neo that I was pretty surprised that it was so slow at. We'll talk about that again in a minute. One usability test I did find in Final Cut Pro is how long it takes it to do a magnetic mask clip. So I'm going to take this, and all these computers I still have, I'll try to run that test. This is a newer idea of a test for me. And then Lightroom Classic, exporting photos. I need to write more about that. I think that was exporting like 500 raw photos down to JPEG. It might have been 100. I'll have to double check some of my older videos and reference that and make sure I repeat the test in a fair way. But I was very surprised with that one before, that the MacBook Air struggled so much with that one compared to any of the others. And it seemed to be some sort of thermal throttling issue. I know the Adobe software's not like fully optimized for Apple. They say it is, but it's not as good as the actual Apple stuff. I'd love to use more of the Creator Studio software in these tests too. I just haven't learned how to use it all yet. So that's all my Mac testing. You can find the link to this spreadsheet in the description below. And if you have any input on what you would like to see me testing, especially if it's stuff that's super easy to put numbers on a spreadsheet like this, that way we can have really great comparisons on what these computers are able to hit. I also went ahead and I included my SSD speed test guide. That is so cool how that is rendering like that. But I put this in the description as well. I've been told I need to add AJA disk test to these, so I'm going to be doing that soon to see how long these are able to sustain their speeds on the read and the write over a 500 gigabyte transfer. because Blackmagic disk test is not going quite as long. So I've got that speed test file in there as well. So yeah, you let me know what any of your input is on this. Join the Discord server if you want to talk with me directly, or send me a DM on Instagram. You can contact me on my website too. I can be, you can get in touch with me in a couple different ways. So do that. I would really appreciate that help so I can make sure these videos are the best they can possibly be and that the info is relevant to as many people as possible. Next thing I wanted to talk about is video editing on the MacBook Neo. I guess we'll just talk about the MacBook Neo more in general. So I did my video review of it last week. It ended up being a longer video than I was hoping for it to be. I was hoping that would be closer to like a 8-minute video, and it turned into like a 20-minute video. So it was a pretty comprehensive guide to everything you can expect with that computer, all the features and stuff like that that it has. And that video has done pretty well. It hasn't really got too many negative comments on it. But then I decided to keep testing the MacBook Neo. And I think in that video I said something about the video exporting speed on the MacBook Neo was not as close as the MacBook Air, which is fine. Like, that's just me making an observation about it. So I put another video out where I went into some more testing on the MacBook Neo and the speed tests on it. And that was where I was kind of surprised at how snooty some of the comments got, because I wasn't trying to make a point or anything. I was just trying to give some helpful information. And we got a comment real quick we'll read too before we keep going. Yes, I do think it'll steal market share from some Windows PCs, from people who have iPhones and who want to be able to do stuff like iMessage or have all your photos syncing through the cloud. And when people figure out that you can do those sort of things with the MacBook Neo, I think that's when it's going to have a lot more traffic and traction. It may take a little bit of time, and it'll be interesting too to see, like in fall with back to school sessions and people going back both to like kids school and also college. I think that's when we'll see some of the true sales numbers, because not as many people are buying laptops right now. So there's always a huge surge in the computer sales towards August, September, that time frame. So I think that's going to be the true time when we see just how popular the Neo becomes. Not right now. I think March was kind of a funny time for them to launch it. In some ways, I'm surprised they weren't able to launch this like last June. That would have been a great time to drop it right before back to school, but maybe they decided to soft launch it in March so they could kind of ramp up and see what the demand would be. And then now they know it's a pretty popular computer, and they can be expecting that when everyone's going back to school, it's time to have them. Like, these are going to sell like hotcakes. So yeah, with the we were talking about some of the different videos I did. We did the full-length Mac Neo review. That one was pretty well received. It didn't really have any controversy on it. But when I made a couple community posts on YouTube, I did this post. So I was trying to export a 30-minute clip from Final Cut, and I just noticed it was going really slow. So I just quickly documented it. At the beginning of it, 4.5 minutes later, it was at 2% on the export. And normally when you export a video, you can see the share on Final Cut kind of spinning and like the progress bars moving. And I just was really surprised it was going that slow, because I had done a 3-minute video and that took 3 minutes and 42 seconds. It was a 4K video, maybe 6K actually. I think it was 6K exporting it to 4K. That same video took 1 minute and 31 seconds to export on the M5 MacBook Air, and it took 1 minute and 51 seconds on the M4 MacBook Air. So I was really surprised there. I mean, I knew that the A18 Pro chip of the MacBook Neo was not going to be as good as the MacBook Air. Of course, I'm not dumb. Like, we all knew that. But I was not expecting going for a very long video and it actually taking hours. So I did a 30-minute H.264 4K clip from one of my Lumix S1 II cameras. It ended up taking 3 hours and 30 minutes to export that video. And I come from a background with a lot of long form videos where you need to export stuff that's like an hour long, and you need to compress it, and you want to get it done quickly so you can get it uploaded to the internet. And so I was just really disappointed in that, because that makes this computer just not a viable option for people who are trying to quickly turn around files. Also, the way I edit stuff, I'll export it, preview it, and if there's any issues with the file, I'll re-export it and double check and make sure that all those issues were taken care of, because sometimes your computer can export and render stuff and it doesn't turn out right. So having it do that quicker is better because you can get more work done faster, which means you're able to be more productive. So I know this is a student computer. I know it's a budget computer. I know most people aren't going to be using it for this, but there needs to be a line that you can reference to say, I can get by with a MacBook Neo. Or maybe there's the line that says, I need to get a MacBook Air. I need to get a Mac Studio. And that's all I'm trying to do, is set this line in the sand of, okay, you're going to be able to get by with this computer just fine. It's going to be more than enough for you. Or say, yeah, you need to spend almost double to get a MacBook Air instead. So anyways, I made that post and it got a lot of comments on it. Yeah, so we'll read some of these. I don't normally do the reading the mean comments thing, but I actually found this to be entertaining. Whoever exports 30 minutes wouldn't even care of the existence. That's possible. Next person said it's the 8 gigs of RAM. What was interesting is it didn't seem like the computer was using all the RAM when I was doing the export. I was monitoring it. It also wasn't using the whole power of the CPU or the GPU. Yeah, I'm not sure what was going on with that. The Neo handling 100 tabs open on Safari. I still haven't tried that yet, but that would be fun to try. Yeah, and I think having an M4 Mac Studio loaded with a Neo as a sidekick is great. That's kind of what I've been doing with the MacBook Air. I don't edit much video on the MacBook Air, but I like knowing if I need to, I can use the MacBook Air and get stuff done in about half the time it would take for the Mac Studio versus like the much longer it would take on the Mac Neo. Because I was about to make a video being like, this is the perfect companion computer for the Mac Studio, but now I'm kind of rethinking that, and maybe it's a perfect companion for certain people, but if you want to do video editing and exporting on it, then I don't think you'd like it. This person got it. They said, good to know. Thank you for your research. That's all it was. Someone said, if you use a Windows laptop, which I thought it probably won't work at all. Using a MacBook Neo for that kind of video production is like using a calculator to turn on a TV. They're not wrong. iMovie's running good on the Mac Neo. Do you have any export tests you could share with me on that? I haven't got to try iMovie on it yet. Here's one of the comments that I thought was funny. My mom does not export video, play games, but she browses the net, reads newspapers and emails. Yeah, that's exactly what this is for. And they also said I should get some of the same price Windows laptops. I'm very interested in checking out some other similar Windows laptops. I need to get on Amazon and Best Buy and look for the best sellers. That way I can compare this to those and see what they're like. Would it struggle less for 1080p videos? I was really thankful for that comment. I did test this, and then I found when I did a 30-minute 1080 video, it only took 8 minutes. So it did greatly increase the speed by going down to 1080 from 4K. And that was using a 1080 clip exporting to 1080. I didn't try it with a 4K clip exporting to 1080. I got a lot of comments like this too. You're exporting an external SSD using the slow port. I actually wasn't doing that. I was using the port to power the computer. Not worth buying. I don't care what the hype is. Anything else is better for that price. That's where I kind of disagree. It's a brand new computer that should be supported for many years from Apple, given their history of how long they support everything. So I think if I was trying to decide between a MacBook Neo or a MacBook Air, like M1 or M2, I'd still probably get the MacBook Neo. And I've actually got an M1 MacBook Air from someone that I'm going to be borrowing and shooting out with the MacBook Neo just to see like what the difference is and how it feels. We got a few comments in chat. Yeah, those specs on an M4 Mac are great as well. I think the M4 MacBook Air, I tried the 15-inch and the 13-inch and really liked both of them. The one I ended up buying just had 16 gigs of RAM, and I got the 512, and that one is awesome. I'm going to be really curious to shoot that out with the M5 and see how much better it is. And if you've got any recommendations, you said you've tried a couple PCs in this price range, not even close to the Neo. Just help me find I need to go find the best $600 MacBook Neo equivalents and just see, you know, what can you expect with like DaVinci Resolve or something like that. It's probably not even going to run on it. So that was the first post. The next thing that really was funny was on Threads. I don't really use Threads that much. I think I made a couple posts on it and I've got like 22 followers on it. I just focus on YouTube. It's really hard to keep track of all the different social media websites and put content on everything. So same post as YouTube, and I don't know what's considered viral. I would consider this to be like somewhat viral, especially for someone with no following on Threads, but it got so many comments. See, I don't even know how you view comments on Threads. That would be embarrassing if this doesn't work. So I had a long post, and at the bottom I said, I know this isn't what it's for, but it's worth noting. And there were a lot of people who were telling me I was using the wrong port. Let's see if I can figure out how to read all these comments. But yeah, I was very surprised with what people had to say on Threads about it. These are the comments I really wanted to read too on this video, and just go over them, see if I was maybe missing anything or not. It's a phone. It's the shape of a laptop. Why would you export 4K video from this? Just trying it. Yeah, let me know who was Apple glazing the Neo. If you've got that video handy and you can paste it in the chat, I'll check it out later after we're done with this stream. Yeah, a lot of people, some people liked it too, and I probably should have considered that. Like, the people liking it are the people who actually understood the point of the post I was trying to make. Bro, it's a cheap Mac. Relax. Just testing. The point of this post, this made no sense. This person understood it. People are missing the point. This is interesting to know, especially as contrast to the C. It can do everything. That's the thing. It can't do everything. Next time you fill up your car tires, please use a bike hand pump. Well, everyone knows that a bike hand pump is going to take a really long time to pump up your car tires. And that's kind of what I was doing for the MacBook Neo, is just showing, you know, why it's underpowered for that sort of thing. Someone asked how it'd be for Photoshop and Lightroom. I haven't got to test that. If someone's buying it for 4K footage, they need help. This ain't worth noting, but noted regardless. When I saw that one, I thought, actually, it is very much worth noting, because there's people who are going to get this and then they might shoot 4K footage on their phone and try and edit it. Or maybe there's people who are thinking about dabbling in the world of video at some point, and instead of investing in this, they need to save a little bit more and get a MacBook Air. It's a low-cost unit with amazing build quality. Yeah, it's not for everyone. Exactly. Idiotic comparison. Watch a review by an authentic reviewer. If you use Final Cut, it's not for you. There's people who don't care about it, or 4K videos. Yeah, I know. Irrationally annoyed at all these replies from goobers that think the marketing and market segment of this computer is what defines its performance, which you are testing its performance. That's what I thought. Like, yeah, that's what I'm going for. Yeah, a screwdriver can also transfer the data. That's not actually true. I had some people telling me I needed to do exports using ProRes video, but I would say most people aren't shooting in ProRes, and the file sizes of ProRes are insane. I tried to shoot ProRes on my S1R2 this morning, and I was just blown away at how large the files were. I think I could get like 1 minute in like 30 gigs. So I was using the kind of codecs that most people are going to shoot in, and doing stuff that I've done with my MacBook Air for the last year. And that was kind of what I was noting, is the stuff the Air can handle, the Neo might not be able to handle. Yeah, it's a $600 computer. What do you expect? Hey, don't quit your day job. Who would have thought? Yeah, there were a lot of comments on there. It's worth noting. It's not worth noting. I think it's worth noting. The next thing is I put this video on Friday. So after I made that post, I did some more tests. Maybe this was before I made that post. I think this was after I finished my tests up. I made the post, and then I posted this video to Final Cut Pro editing problems on the MacBook Neo. And I did this just because I wanted to show what I thought about it. And if you watch the video, it just basically says the same thing as my post. This person said, if you're trying to edit 36K video 3 6K camera views on an entry-level laptop, then you're not smart enough to do laptop reviews and you should do a cooking channel or anything else. Maybe watch some of the other reviewers who have already put up videos that they edited on the Neo. So I was like, that's pretty funny, and I actually pinned that to the top. It's not about how smart you are to do a review. It's just about sharing your experience using something. So that was pretty funny to me. This person got it. This illustrates the need to know the limitations before buying one. You need at least a MacBook Air for any heavy lifting. That's kind of what we're going to be getting into in the future. This person thought there were some thermal throttling issues. This person said a 1080 video for an hour took about 10 minutes long. So that's pretty close to my findings on those. Yeah, this person also, I follow them on Threads and have seen a lot of their videos. I was kind of disappointed in a fellow creator for posting this. I thought that was kind of a sad comment. It's $600, go for a walk or have some lunch. 3 hours is too long. I used to wait all night to export videos. So again, I'm just trying to show what to expect with these computers. If you have any tests that you want me to do to show what you can expect with it, besides just exporting videos, then go for it. Like, I tested Minecraft on it. Minecraft worked great on it. I browsed the web. I answered emails. I wrote other video scripts on it. Just, you know, kind of using it for like student-like and basic productivity. And I was noticing like the computer's really great at that. So again, yeah, those are most of the comments I wanted to read. Someone asked about TikTok edits. I still think that the Air is going to be a better option for that. Yeah, telling us the obvious, useless hot take. Anyways, wanted to read some of those comments. I thought they were a little bit out of line, a little bit unhinged. And now if anyone else wants to see or wants to tell me what they think the line of where you can get away with the Neo is or the Air, then I would really like to hear that. Especially if you have stuff like that feels a little bit more real world in nature than editing videos. I have a couple of other ideas I want to do. You can say something can handle gaming or not handle gaming, and I know there's some tests for that, but a lot of that, again, is more about feel, and a video export is actually something you can time and compare to other computers. So that was why I picked that test as one of my tests to see how much better the Air is than the Neo. The next question we got in the comments, low-cost unit with amazing build quality, it's not for everyone. I think that's a great way of summing it up. I might have to steal that for a video in the future. AirPods Max 2, I think the AirPods Max 2 are a little overpriced for what they are. And right now I'm really locked in on the computers. I've got a lot of computers and iPads to do, so I don't think I'm going to do the AirPods Max 2. But at some point I might be interested in testing them out. I had a friend text me yesterday and they were like, oh, of course they would release the new version of this when I finally got the first generation 2 months ago. So I felt bad for them. It's kind of funny how Apple seems to do that. Like, you wait forever for them to put an update out for something, and then when you finally get it, they put it out. Next topic I had for the stream today is kind of just the roadmap for what you can expect coming out of the channel going forward. So I was looking at a lot of my other videos I've done in the past and just thinking about where the newest generation falls with all those type of videos, the Neo and stuff like that. So we're going to be doing a Neo versus iPad Air with keyboard, kind of doing a deep dive into what you can expect out of both of those when you would want to buy either of them. Got my ultimate Mac buying guide that will be coming out soon. Part of me would really like to wait to do this one until they put out the newest desktop generation, but it might be June before that happens, unfortunately. But this one will definitely come out. Simple MacBook buying guide. Some of these are going to be a little bit nerdier. They're going to be a little bit more in the weeds where we really go into depth on things. And then the simple one, hopefully in about 4 minutes, we can help someone decide which MacBook they need. Do they need an Air? Do they need a Pro? Is a Neo just fine? Simple iPad buying guide. That one is also in the pipeline. I'd say after messing with the iPads, I've got that one just about figured out. I wish they had the newest base model iPad launched. Last year they put the A16 out, and March, so I was kind of surprised they didn't put a new base model one out at the same time as the Air. Maybe they did that to try and boost the sales of the iPad Air. I'm not completely sure. Also, we'll do iPad A16 versus MacBook Neo, just because those both have A series processors. That one might end up being kind of a nerdy video where we do more of a deep dive of like what you can expect out of processing and stuff like that. I've got this kind of out of left field. I don't know why it's on this list. Best Anker power banks. They've launched a couple new power banks this year, and they replaced some of them in the last best of video, so that'll be a video coming soon. iPad keyboard cases. M4 iPad Air Magic Keyboard review. Technically, it's the same as the M3, but they finally launched a black version of it after last year, and it's kind of going to be a 1-year review because I got the iPad Air keyboard case at launch, and then I also got the iPad Pro version of it, so I was able to test both of those. So I think that's going to be an interesting video to show some of the things I noticed about it in the last year. MacBook Neo accessory buying guides. That'll go over like the keyboards, mouse, screen, SSD, and more. That video is going to be based around like the best stuff that actually makes sense for this, because a lot of times on the channel we review the best stuff for like Mac Studio use or MacBook Pro use, and since the MacBook Neo has the slower ports on it, I think going over some more budget options is going to be cool for that. Okay, some of the battles, M4 Pro versus M5 Pro, real world tests and comparison. That video is going to be as soon as I get the M5 Pro out and start testing everything on it. You still would have got that set up even with the Neo. Okay, I'm curious on your logic about that. I know some people prefer using an iPad for their casual use, but I know there's also people that prefer the laptop Mac OS experience over the iPad experience, even for casual use. Like my wife doesn't like iPads. I've tried to get her to use them, and she wants the MacBook Neo, so she's going to be using the MacBook Neo soon. 16 gigabytes versus 24 of RAM is really going to depend on what you're using the computer for, because like we found with the MacBook Neo, 8 gigabytes is all you really need to do like most things you use a computer for if you're not actually processing stuff. But the 16 gigabytes is going to be better for multitasking, obviously, and it can handle other tasks better than the 8. The 24, whenever I was comparing the M5 MacBook Pro with 16 and 24 gigabytes of RAM, the 24 just was able to let me launch more things without running into bottlenecks as quickly. And also, I want to say so these top two, we've got 16 gigs and 24 gigs. There were like a couple things that got a little bit faster, but a lot of stuff was very close. Interestingly enough, the Adobe Lightroom export got quite a bit faster with 24 gigs of RAM than 16, which I was kind of surprised. I thought that would mostly use the CPU power, not the RAM, but that made a big difference. Other than that, a lot of stuff was just like very slightly faster with more RAM, except for AI performance went up quite a bit for running local models. Local LLMs with 24 gigs was a pretty big improvement, namely in that time to first token. So on that test, it was 2 seconds instead of 12, so that's 10 seconds faster to generate a response. And on that one, it was about 5 seconds versus 15, so again, 10 seconds faster for a response. So yeah, the 24 definitely makes a big difference if you want to run applications, but it's going to depend on what they are. And you can reference that spreadsheet if you want to see some of the specific, more nerdy tests on that. The next thing, so we were talking about some of our battles. We're going to do M5 versus M5 Pro, M5 Max. We'll also, I'm just going to do a dedicated M4 iPad Air review. We'll shoot out the 11 and 13 inch. We're going to show some different things like certain applications in full screen on those, so you can get an idea of what it looks like to have two windows side by side on it. Stuff like that. We'll do a 15 inch M5 MacBook Air review. This is a computer that I feel like doesn't get a lot of love on the internet. People are always talking about how the M5 Mac, or how the 15 inch MacBook Air is just too big to carry around. But I used to recommend, I had a lot of people who wanted a 15 inch computer and they had to go out and buy one of the giant 15-inch MacBook Pros, and they didn't even need the power of it. So I actually love that Apple has a 15-inch laptop, and that's part of why I want to review it, because there's definitely a use case for someone who doesn't want the 13, they want a 15, and now they don't have to get a MacBook Pro. Jace said, a full desktop OS is more intimidating to older people that are not computer savvy. The iPad's more approachable like the phone. That's a great point, and I wasn't really thinking of that. But yeah, I guess for the right person who hasn't used a computer much recently and they've played around on their phone a lot, then the iPad just feels like a phone with a bigger screen. So I actually think I'm going to write that down and use that in a future video, because that's definitely a good reason for someone to get an iPad instead of a MacBook. Okay, so we were talking 15-inch M5 MacBook Air review. We've also got 13-inch versus 15-inch MacBook Air. We'll show those side by side. I'm going to show some different applications. Again, I'll show Final Cut Pro on it. I'll show like Photoshop, some word processors and stuff like that, so you can see how big the different sidebars are, things like that. See how much bigger of a difference the 15-inch display makes on it. Studio Display 2 review. Studio Display 2 just came in. I got the cheaper one. Is it enough? Actually, B&H loaned me that. Thank you, B&H. May end up buying one with VESA mount. May get two with VESA. We'll see. Next, Logitech Combo Touch for M4 iPad Air. That's another one I reviewed last year. Magic Keyboard for M5 iPad Pro. I've had that one a year now. Thunderbolt 5 dock comparison. I did one of these. It's almost time to do an update on it. A couple companies have launched new ones since I made my video showing all the top dogs in the Thunderbolt dock landscape, so we'll probably redo that. M5 Pro versus M5 Max MacBook Pro. The M5 Max is expensive to get in a MacBook Pro. I think it starts at $3,600 or something like that. I think it's like $1,600 more to get a Max chip and a MacBook Pro than it is to get it in a Mac Studio, which if you're on the go and you need that, I guess it makes sense. But that's part of why I really wanted to get the Mac Studio, because I wanted to use it with an external display anyways. And I thought I'd just take the $1,000 difference and put it towards buying my new monitor, and then for my computer just buy $1,000, or for a laptop just buy $1,000 laptop, instead of putting all the eggs in one basket with the really expensive M5 Max chip. But yeah, we'll be doing that one. MacBook Pro versus MacBook Air. I did that last year. It's actually going to be a very similar video, because I think the argument for MacBook Pro and MacBook Air is still, it's probably pretty close to what it was last year still. There's probably not a lot that's changed with it. M5 MacBook Air accessories. I'll do a follow-up 3 months later video for the M5 MacBook Air. Same for the MacBook Neo. iPad Air M4 versus iPad Mini. I'm not sure if I'm going to make that video. I'm kind of on the fence about it. Which iPad to buy in 2026. I did that video at the beginning of the year, and now things have changed, so got to update that. That's actually the same video. iPad Air M4 versus Pro M5. These are kind of interesting because it seems like with the iPads, Apple's kind of segmenting the chips a little bit. So I don't know if they're ever going to have both the iPads be on the same series of chips, which is different than what they do with the MacBook Air and MacBook Pro. Like right now, you can get a MacBook Air or a MacBook Pro with the same M5 chip. And then you just have a couple things to decide on. If you want the bigger screen, if you want the extra ports, the better display quality, then that tells you you need the MacBook Pro. With the iPad Air, it's a little bit trickier to, or the iPad Air and the iPad Pro, it's a little trickier. So that'll be a video. M5 MacBook Pro and MacBook Air tests and comparisons. Video editing with the MacBook Neo. We already did that one. That's the one that we were talking about a bit earlier with the hate comments. M5 MacBook Pro buyer's guide. M5 MacBook Air buyer's guide. MacBook Neo buyer's guide. I don't know if I need to do that one or not. There's really not much that you have to think about with the MacBook Neo. But those are going to talk about all the options you get when you order them from Apple or B&H or wherever, all the different features you get to choose from. And I know it can get intimidating for people if they're not wanting to stack extra money on it. So these are the kind of videos that can help people decide if you need to invest more or if you're going to be able to just get by with what you've already got. iPad Pro Magic Keyboard versus Air Magic Keyboard. I made that video last year, and then they changed a couple things with launching the black Air Magic Keyboard, and I've used both of them for the last year. The iPad Pro keyboard is actually quite a bit nicer than the Air one. So if you want to use it with the keyboard, I really like the Pro over the Air for the iPad. And then we'll do M5 MacBook Air and M4 MacBook Air. That one's going to be fun to do. Maybe I'll do an M5 Air versus M1. M5 MacBook Air versus M5 Pro performance. Let's see. Some more Mac versus iPad videos. This is what I need help with. What do you guys want to know about Mac versus iPad? What are the specific things you want to do? This isn't Apple, but OYN just launched a new, I guess it's not new, but they relaunched the U34 Bolt, and it's faster than it used to be, has a better SSD in it. And I actually updated my SSD test yesterday. I don't know why this spreadsheet never wants to render right, but this has my updated tests on that, so I might make an updated video for that. Ultimate Mac Computer Buying Guide. That one's going to have a lot of great stuff in it. Mac laptops versus desktops. That's one I could really use some help with as well, because I've had some people comment on the past desktop versus laptop videos and say, like, you can basically summarize it. Do you want to use the screen or not? And I think there's more that you need to consider when you're trying to decide on investing in a desktop than just like what's the screen you want to use it with. Like, thermal throttling can be really hard to measure, but with the nicer desktop computers, they really do a better job keeping cool and sustaining that performance. So it's possible some of my tests that we were talking about earlier will show up well on that. Got a few more comments to read. When will they come out with the new Mac Mini and Studio? The best guess I've seen so far has been WWDC, which kind of makes sense. I also have had some people saying they don't think that they're going to launch a new Mac Mini and Studio this year because they don't always launch a new one every single year. And normally I would say, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But the jump from the M4 to the M5 with the AI neural accelerators that they're putting on is really big. And there's so many people who are buying the Mac Studio and the Mac Mini right now to run LLMs. And so I think with some of the updates and changes they made with the M5 series of Pros, they've got a huge market, like just waiting to buy M5 Mac Minis and Mac Studios. Like the main improvements they made in those computers is in AI performance. So to me, that's why I think it would be silly for Apple to wait and not launch a new Mini and Studio this year when they have the chipsets ready already for them. Unless there's these rumors about the M6 processor maybe coming out this fall. I'm not sure if I buy that. I could see it happening. Like last year we got the M5 last fall. Maybe we could get the M6 this fall. But I think there's people ready to buy Mac Minis and Mac Studios now, and they're just selling them out like hotcakes. So the market is there. It's ready. Jake says, what's up? Haters gonna hate. Appreciate that, man. Hey, I actually was just thinking of you the other day. I know I've seen you on a few streams. If you want to join the Discord server, I've got a link to do that in the description, and I would actually appreciate your perspective on some stuff. I think you had said in a video you do YouTube as well, so you might have some interesting computer questions. Yeah, and Crow watching, also thanks for the comments. Thanks for subscribing. If you want to join the Discord server or anyone watching, I've got links in that. We started chatting a little bit about computer stuff the other day. Jace said, I think with the MacBook Neo, Apple's accepting their original vision that the future of computing was the iPad. It's not averse, but they complement each other. It's not one or the other. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I have a couple different perspectives on that. I think about Adam before reviewing computers and where I would buy a computer and use it for 3 to 4 years. And I would also go out and I would try to get a refurbished one. I would try to squeeze every last cent out of it. And last year I sold my iPad Pro that I'd been using for like 4 or 5 years. It was the first 11-inch iPad Pro. And then I thought I wanted to get into the newer iPads, just see the difference, see what they were capable of doing. And I think if I didn't sell that a year ago, and if I wasn't testing stuff and trying to shoot it out, I think I would still be fine with that original iPad. But I think when the Neo came out, I would have been really attracted to it as, like, I hate to say it, but a throw around computer. I think you might have talked about that earlier. And when I say a throw around computer, I don't mean to like disrespect a computer, but you don't have to worry about leaving it in a car like you do with your $4,000 Max chip, MacBook Pro. But I don't know if I would have wanted to spend the money on both the cheap iPad and also on the MacBook Neo. I almost would have been more tempted to pick one or the other. And I've been thinking recently, like when I got the MacBook Neo, I was like, I could do everything I do on the iPad with just this, which most of what I do with the iPad is watch videos, take it around the house and write notes, answer emails, stuff like that. I don't really use the Apple Pencil. I don't really use a ton of the heavier lifting applications that you can run with the iPad now because they're also different than Mac OS. So to me, I actually like the MacBook Neo experience more because it just feels like I'm using one of my other computers or like my main computer, but on the go. And I think that's kind of what I liked with the iPad before, is it was just like a dumbed down, simpler version. The iPad's cheaper than a MacBook Air or, you know, a throw around computer. And I would use my iPad with the keyboard case a lot to just type stuff when I didn't want distractions. So I've also thought I might just load another user profile on the MacBook Neo that has no applications on it. So I'd run no applications on it except for like notes. I don't even know if I would turn iMessage on it. I don't think I would put any web browsers on it, or I would like shut off the web browsers on it too, just to prevent distraction. So it would be like the ultimate focused writing machine for me. So anyways, that's just how I use it though. And that's why I like hearing from you guys, your perspective on things, because everyone uses stuff a little bit different. And the thing that works for my workflow, like having a really nice desktop computer, might not work for someone else's workflow because someone else might be commuting for work. They might need to work in the car. They might be on the road shooting photos or videos of NBA games, and they need something they can edit videos in hotels, and they don't want to carry a Mac Studio for that. So that's why I really appreciate the other perspectives. Jake said, on YouTube for 10 years now. Yeah, that's awesome, man. I'll check your channel out again later. Jay said a student could use the MacBook Neo for school and then use the iPad for all your school books. That's a really good point. I hadn't really thought about them complementing themselves in that way. And that would solve the problem of having a slightly smaller display on the computer as well, because you could be holding your books and then taking notes on your computer as well. And you might not care about the display quality of the iPad. And I think you can get an A16 for like $300 now. That's a great point. And it could still be syncing stuff back onto the iPad and back and forth across apps. So if you wanted to use the iPad instead of the computer, then you got a backup. Let's see. Kev said if Neo came back before, I would have never bought the iPad Air or MacBook Air M4. So Kev, what are you using your iPad Air or MacBook Air for? That's what I'm curious. Like, what is this line that people are trying to navigate to decide when you spend more money or when you're just fine with the Neo? Because that's kind of the same thing that I was thinking in my brain. I would have bought the Neo instead of an Air last year to go with my Mac Studio, except for once I did the video editing test, I was like, oh, this can't be my backup video machine. Jake also said a much needed entry-level position in the Apple ecosystem. Yeah, I agree with that too. The phone thing is kind of interesting. I don't remember what they priced the 17E at, but isn't the 17E only $100 cheaper than the 17? Like the 17E is $700, 17 is $800, and 17 Pro is $1,000, which the iPhone situation is still kind of weird. I feel like the budget iPhone is still not around. Like, it's funny that we can have a budget iPad, but we can't have a budget iPhone. That's something Apple still needs to get. no idea which computer to get. I've got an M3 Pro 16-inch. Tired of the wait. Yeah, so I don't remember when the MacBook Air 15-inch came out, but you sound exactly like the kind of person that I used to have to recommend to get a 16-inch Pro to. Someone who wants the bigger screen, but you don't need all the power of it. So I would say it would be cool if you could go to an Apple store or a Best Buy, hold the 15-inch Air, hold the 13-inch Air. If you really want the bigger screen, then you can't get a Neo. The Air and the Neo feel very similar to me in size and weight. Here's my M5 Air. It's just a little bit bigger than the Neo. When you have them side by side, you can tell this one's a little bit bigger, but they weigh the exact same. So if you don't want the 15-inch display, you can choose between those. If you want to keep your bigger display, I personally felt like the 15-inch MacBook Air felt smaller than the 14-inch MacBook Pro. That was just my view of it. I've had other people who tell me, oh, it's not that much smaller. Something about the way that it slid into a backpack and the way it feels when you pick it up felt a little better balanced than the 14-inch to me. That being said, the 16-inch Pros, yeah, they're huge. We've got one of them at work, and every time I pick it up, I feel like I'm actually carrying around a pile of bricks. So I can totally see wanting to change that. So my question to you is, if you have no idea what computer to get, the first question is, what display size do you want? If you want the larger display, the 15-inch Air is really nice. I really like the 15-inch Air. If you don't care about display size, do you care about display quality? Because the Air's display does look a lot nicer than the Neo when you have them side by side. But if you don't know, you don't have them side by side, the Neo still works fine. I'm looking at the Neo right now. It looks great. I don't notice any problems with it, except for when I have the Air by it. I can tell it looks a little bit nicer than the Neo. So what size of display do you want? If you don't want the bigger one, then what are you actually doing with the computer? If you're not doing much with applications and you're mostly just like writing emails, word processing, productivity, watching videos, either of them's fine. The Air is definitely a little nicer than the Neo though. Kev says, I use iPad Air for scanning docs and then AirDrop along with social media. I would say, yeah, I can see exactly why you would like a Neo. You could honestly probably use your phone for scanning docs and airdropping them too with the Neo. That would be a nice power combo. Jay said, using the MacBook Neo, the base iPad, and the 17E, and the base AirPods. Yeah, just see if there's any features that I actually am missing, or if everything is still able to be ran the exact way I'd like it. That would be kind of cool. I don't think I'm going to get a 17E. I've kind of stayed away from the phone review space. It's just not something I'm super into. I feel like with the phones, more than the computers, people get tempted to upgrade just because. And with the computers, I think people are usually a little more intentional. But I really like that idea. And actually, that could be interesting to talk about, like what you're missing or what you can get by with, because maybe someone would want to upgrade one of those three devices and get a nicer one of the three, but otherwise they could use the cheaper ones. Kev also said, regretting I helped my mom buy this 16, but she wanted an unlocked phone. Yeah, and that's another thing I don't really understand is like phone contracts and the best way to buy phones. Apple also is really stingy with their trade-in value. If you go to just buy a phone outright and you trade it in, you get less money, and they never put their phones on sale. So you get less money for the old phone you already had, and you're paying more for the phone. But what the carriers are doing is they're locking you into their contract for a while, so that's why they're able to save the money and give them to you at better prices. I don't think I've changed cell phone carriers in like 6 or 7 years, though. I've been with, I think it's Verizon for a while. And I know I'm going to stay with them. That being said, the problem with what some of the carriers is doing now is they're locking you in for 3 years. And if you get out, it can be kind of expensive. I've only ever got the 16-inch because I like the larger screen. I think that answers the question then. I think you should get the 15-inch Air. If you want to get something newer and you don't want to go down in screen size, to me, I know there's the 13-inch Air and the 14-inch Pro, and I know you can say, well, the Pro version is a little bit bigger display. I'm looking at the Neo, I'm looking at the Pro, back and forth right now. For actual usage, the difference from one to the next is not very much. So I think, don't feel like the 15-inch is going to be tiny, but if you go down from a 16-inch to a 13-inch or even the 14, you'll definitely feel like when you go down in the same model, you definitely notice a bigger difference than when you look at the ones that are pretty close, like the 13-inch Air and the 15-inch Air. Jay said, I only buy unlocked phones, commitment issues to a carrier. I mean, that's not a bad strategy either. Like, if they're locking you in on a contract, then they can do whatever they want. And sometimes we're just at the mercy of cell phone carriers. As far as this stream goes, I think we've touched on pretty much everything that I was hoping to. Again, I'm just going to give another plug for the Discord server. Join it. I really want to get some members on it. Kev says 2015 MacBook Pro has better speakers than the MacBook Air M4. Yeah, that's fair. And the MacBook Air speakers aren't quite as good as the MacBook Pros. I felt like the speakers on the 15-inch Air that I tried last year were pretty good. Every time I use my MacBook Pro and I listen to music, I'm always like, okay, that definitely sounds a little bit better than the MacBook Airs, but I guess it just depends how you want to use it. If you're using it with AirPods a lot, or if you got HomePods laying around, or, you know, studio monitors like I do, then the speakers don't matter quite as much. But yeah, they definitely are better in the Pro models. I was actually surprised. I thought that the Air speakers were going to sound quite a bit better than the Neo speakers, and they sounded pretty similar to me. They changed the location though. The Neo speakers are on the side, and then the Air speakers are on the top. How many days do I do live streams? I do live streams every Tuesday, 1 p.m. Central Time, and typically it goes 20 minutes to an hour and a half. We're at an hour right now because people are talking about stuff, and I'm taking some notes for some future videos. So yeah, it all just kind of depends. Or if I got stuff I need to get back to work on for the channel, then sometimes I just do kind of a quick update stream and see if anyone's got any questions. The other thing that I've been doing at that desk setup is some edit and chills. So that's just a time where I've got all my B-roll shot for a video, and then I just stream my screen, put a camera on, and you can come watch me edit. You can just leave it on in the background if you're working on stuff. You can also ask questions, and then as I'm editing, I'm just monitoring the chat and answering as we go. So that's something fun I've been doing. I've got 3 videos in progress right now, and I need to get some B-roll for those. I need to get tomorrow's video scheduled to go up because I'm still publishing like at least 3 days a week. Kind of got a backlog of some stuff that's been done for a while, and I've been scheduling it out. So yeah, I typically stream at least once a week. The goal is like 2 to 3 times, but it kind of just depends. Verizon's been great for me. I haven't had any issues with them. I think they had, I take that back. They had like one day where it was out like nationwide, and I did have an issue with that, but that almost seemed like something else was going on. That was weird. Latest updates causing heating or battery drainage issues. It depends on what you're talking about. So I have felt like the Mac or the iPhone, I'm trying to find my phone. I feel like the iPhone's been draining. Yeah, it's already at 64%, and I've got the 17 Pro. I find that to be kind of funny when I haven't really used it much today. With the iPads, I've always felt like iPad battery life is unpredictable. Like I never know how much battery life an iPad is going to have when I pick it up if I didn't get it off the charger. Like, especially if you don't use an iPad every day, it drains kind of funny sometimes. And I think it's also probably talking back and forth with iCloud, downloading my notes, because I use Apple Notes so much on different devices. As far as the computers, I pretty much never use a laptop for a whole workday. So I have a hard time monitoring what the battery's at. Like, I don't know the last time I charged this Neo. It's at 45% right now. I don't know how much I've used it since I charged it either. This MacBook Pro is almost always plugged in. So yeah, I'm not really sure on the battery life stuff. I know some people have said they think every time Apple launches new computers that the battery life on everything gets suspicious. So yeah, I haven't personally noticed that. Well, I think I need to get back to work with some other stuff, but again, gonna give one more plug. You should see it in the description. There's a couple links where you can click, join the Discord server. You can check out the SSD guide. You can check out my computer speed tests. And yeah, you can do that and see if there's anything that you want me to add to it, anything that would be useful for your research purposes on all the different computers. M5 MacBook Air is incoming. The next videos, I don't know what's going up tomorrow. I need to look at what I've already finished. But yesterday I shot a 4-minute version of the MacBook Air versus MacBook Neo. I also shot like an 18-minute version of it. It's going to be pretty in detail. And then ESR has also sponsored a video. They've got some cool new chargers that just came out recently. All 25-watt Qi2 chargers. And that video, I think, is going up on Friday, and it's about halfway done right now. So I really need to get that one done because they're kind of waiting on me for that one. One last question. Do you sync all Apple devices with the same Apple ID? Yeah, I do that. You can also, if you wanted to kind of separate things and have some stuff be shared, you could use multiple Apple IDs, and you could share like certain folders and notes and things like that. There have been times when I've set up multiple users on some computers, and when I've done that, I've not signed in on my Apple ID. That way I can just keep it a little bit more minimal and not having as many interruptions on it. There's some different ways that you can pull that off. You can also disable certain things on different user accounts if you don't want some of the Apple ID features to be on that specific device. But yeah, all the other ones I've got, they're all on the same Apple ID. Neo versus iPad Air. I haven't done that, but I'm going to. And the Neo is kind of part of what made me like not as excited for the iPad Air when I got it. Like I was still excited to check it out, but I really just wanted to play with the Neo and see what it could do. There's definitely some people who would prefer the Air over the Neo, but I think if I could only have one, I'd take the Air, or I'd take the Neo over the Air. But anyways, thanks again, guys, for being a part of the stream today. Hope to see you in future videos, and also join the Discord server. Have a great day.